Hello, all. I am back on the political napalm. My apologies that it's been a few weeks between uploads here on YouTube. Life has been considerably busy, and the way the news has been coming lately, everything is so fast and furious that when I think I'm about ready to catch up and do a video, of course, the news moves on. So the whole almost 24-hour news cycle thing is really been appropriate lately. So we're going to go ahead and jump back into it. So leaving off where we are, picking up where we left off on some of the previous videos, the 3 people in Tennessee have been reinstated. As you are well aware, one of them never was actually let go or expelled to begin with, but the other 2 were. They are now back. Originally, there was going to be some talk about conditionals and everything. That seems to not be the case, but the Tennessee 3 are now firmly entrenched in their jobs again. However, boy, Tennessee continues to be an absolute mess between Bird and Rose being the sexual predators that they are, and they are retaining their jobs. What happened with the Tennessee 3 and the hills and hoops and hurdles they had to go through to get reinstated, to the fact that Tyson Chicken in the area was using a company that was employing child labor, cleaning the plants and everything. I mean, Tennessee has just become a complete hellhole of American politics. But even though that's where we left off, it is nice to say that for a change, we're not really going to be discussing it. We're just going to be discussing this week's news so far, going just briefly into each of them because there's definitely quite a bit to cover. So, as of today, April 24th, Fanni Willis down in Fulton County, Georgia, has said that the criminal indictments will come during the next jury session in Georgia, which will be somewhere between July 11th and September 1st. When we take a look at this link over here to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, even though Fanni has been saying indictments were imminent, and she's been saying that for a while, so I don't blame you if you've been wondering, going, will justice ever happen? Or if you were on the opposing side that Trump did anything wrong, you might be thinking, haha, this is proof that nothing will ever happen. He didn't do anything wrong. Her case is weak. She has to try and, shore it up, which is why there's all this time and everything like that. That isn't the case. What we are seeing here is that new items have been revealed in this case, where some of the potential co-conspirators in all this told Fanni, well, wait a minute, we were never offered immunity. And Fanni Willis said, well, what are you talking about? And they mentioned, well, our lawyer never mentioned that we could potentially get time reduced and we would have immunity if we flipped. And Fanni said, your lawyer was supposed to tell you this months ago, almost half a year ago, if not more. You're saying that this was never mentioned to you. And these potential co-conspirators said, no, we never got that kind of offer. So that is why the timetable is shifting on this one. And this is why, despite the fact that those of us against Trump can likely agree this delay kind of sucks, those of us that are pro-Trump maybe want to point their fingers and snicker and say, ha, weak case, this is the proof. Both sides need to chill out on that one a little bit and realize that this case had a little bit of a M. Night Shyamalan twist that came up over here. And things changed because they asked for that lawyer who failed to tell their defendants, well, there is an offer of immunity on the table. That lawyer has been, they have the plaintiffs in this have appealed saying this lawyer should be kicked off. And I think that is going to create a whole lot of issues here because, sort of in a way, if you can remember back to My Cousin Vinny, there was the Ralph Macchio character, and then there was the other guy. For a little while, the other guy was represented by the guy who had a bit of a stutter and had a real major issue public speaking. That kind of a situation is what is likely going to occur here when those of the defendants who did not know that there was an offer of immunity might wind up getting, or not might, are going to wind up with different counsel in this. And this is a serious breach of justice here, that this was not offered properly, and this is a major breach of the legal contract. The other thing that's going on with Fanni Willis is knowing that Trump likes to ramp up the attacks on everybody that goes against him, whether it be Fanni Willis, whether it be Bragg, whether it be Jack Smith or Merrick Garland. He can never do anything the way he should, which is to keep his mouth shut. Honestly, to me, and this is my opinion, and I cannot enforce it upon you or anybody else, it is my opinion that a man who makes such an uproar like this and goes on such an offensive reveals two things about the person's character. One, it reveals that they're used to being able to get results from strong arming. And if you believe in Donald Trump being portrayed the way many New York City people, New Jersey people portray him in his business, he comes across as a bit of a Don, no pun intended. He comes across as a mafia figure. So if you're going to believe the narrative that he is like that, which was further enforced by the bat picture, where he had the picture of the bottom of a bat visible in his hand and he was holding a bat, similar to the way Tom Cruise did his Thinking in A Few Good Men. It seemed to be a very intimidating picture, one designed to convey, okay, let's see you try and mess with me. And then, of course, Bragg was alongside that in the other pane. If you believe the narrative that Trump is that way, is that he is a petty crime lord, it is very easy to believe this man got results in the past by acting this way, by putting out the baseball bat pictures, by going on these verbal tirades and offensive that almost come across as racist, with like the names peekaboo and so on and so forth. And of course, he makes that as part of the attack when he goes after Fanni Willis and Bragg, as he calls them racist and everything. It certainly does look like he believes himself to be that kind of figure and believes he's gotten results on intimidation in the past. Now that he is dealing with things on a national level, now that others have seen him be impeached twice, others have seen all of the litigation that is currently happening with Trump, they have learned about his business failures. There are the rumors going around that perhaps he and Melania are going to split because of what happened with the Stormy Daniels case and everything. I think he is running into people who are emboldened by him not being as effective as he used to be when he was largely isolated to the New York tri-state area. And what we are seeing is people who aren't going to be intimidated by him and aren't going to put up with it. So what Fanni Willis is doing is she is not backing down. She's making sure all her ducks are in a row, including these several new ducks, and also is giving the state of Georgia ample time to prepare physically for this trial with police presence, with protection, and also knowing what is happening with the E. Jean Carroll case, which is the rape case that is going on against Trump. We see him through Joe Tacopino potentially trying to get witness lists and jury lists. And likely it is an intimidation factor that Joe Tacopino is trying these tricks, but he keeps getting shot down each time. Fanni Willis, seeing what he's doing in both of these cases, the Alvin Bragg case and the E. Jean Carroll case, she is doing everything within her power to make sure Georgia and all the people involved in this indictment are protected and are handled the proper way. Trump has called for mass demonstrations in response to the overreach from prosecutors, triggering concerns about a violent unrest, not alike January 6th insurrection. Several legal observers closely following the Fulton investigation that Willis launched 2 years ago said the letter suggests that Willis will seek charges against the former president. It obviously seems to imply the case against Trump will be presented to the grand jury. Former Gwinnett County District Attorney Danny Porter had said. Norm Eisen, a former ethics czar under President Barack Obama, who co-authored the Brookings Institute report on the Fulton probe, agreed. So authorities erected barricades, shut down streets surrounding the courthouse, had a stand ready for roughly 35,000 officers about an hour before Trump's afternoon court appearance in Manhattan. The total shutdown of the route and everything. Because it's not just about protecting the people that Trump may go after. It is also about protecting Trump himself. Nobody wants to see the former president fall prey or victim to a complete nutter or crazy. And when we've seen the state of the world in the past 5 or 6 years, where I believe it was several Republicans were in a baseball game or a softball game, and somebody committed violence at that game, you have to be safe whether you like the people involved or not. And making sure that Georgia is fully prepared for this the way that Manhattan was fully prepared for it is, of course, a good thing on all sides. Last May, as a Fulton judge selected members of the special grand jury, the sheriff's office blocked off vehicle traffic. There were snipers. Law enforcement had a SWAT team to protect the jurors. 6 months later, before jurors interviewed Michael Flynn, Trump's former national security advisor, they assigned heavily armed officers to guard the courthouse steps and brought in a bomb-sniffing dog. Yeah, Michael Flynn is a traitor to the United States. Let's not mince words on that one. He is no patriot whatsoever. He is a man well versed in psyops. That there are some thoughts that potentially it is not Watkins who was Q, but Michael Flynn because of his background in psyops. So that's what's going on down in Georgia with Fanni Willis. As I mentioned before we get on to the next thing, the E. Jean Carroll abuse case is going to court tomorrow, which is Tuesday. Joe Tacopina has tried several very frivolous motions that the judge has quashed each and every time, and they have been around things like trying to get higher degrees of access to witnesses, trying to get access to potential people who may be on the jury. There's been some back and forth whether the jury might be stationed somewhere else to be completely anonymized. Jury selection in this one was problematic because at this point I think everybody has heard of him and has had a reasonable opinion of the man, whether ridiculously pro, con, or ridiculously con. It's going to be hard to find, I think, somebody who wants to go into this completely and legitimately impartial. And that's going to be a very tough thing. And that made jury selection in this one incredibly tough. But we are going to see the E. Jean Carroll case go forward. Of course, today in the news, CNN let go Don Lemon. Fox News let go Tucky Wuckums. This could be potential fallout from the fact that Fox settled with Dominion. I would say people on both sides of the political spectrum were not exactly happy with the settling. People on the right or pro Fox News would believe they're caving in, they're giving up to the woke machine. They're now in the spokes of the woke machine, and why would Fox capitulate? Why would they do this? Those against Fox feel that Dominion didn't get all of what they were asking for. People were excited to see what the discovery would be like. What would the actual case be like once it hits the court? But essentially on the day things would have gotten going there, Fox News wound up settling for, I think it's about $785 million, which is less than what Dominion was asking for, but they did. And Fox has really not dealt with their settling whatsoever. Everybody else has covered it. Fox has not been covering it. But then Fox and Seven-Head Cro-Magnon Dan Bongino have split ways from each other. Tucker today has left. And I believe in his particular case, he was fired. You, of course, have the right sort of going out of their mind now, saying that they're done with Fox, they'll never watch Fox again. They will just go ahead and follow Tucker wherever he goes. You have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, I stand with Tucker and this is it for Fox. There's no reason to watch them anymore. And then simultaneously turning around and saying, well, you know, Don is now out at CNN, so I guess 12 viewers are going to be upset about it. So it's been a completely crazy set of few days over here, especially post settlement with Fox News and Dominion. Now, there's still Smartmatic, which has their lawsuit going for defamation against Fox. This one is bigger. Smartmatic, believe it or not, despite everything you've heard in the news, Smartmatic is bigger than Dominion. So likely this one will not settle. And perhaps Dominion said, okay, we're going to get a little out of this. Fox is already going to take a hit by settling, which does not look good in their case. Big bro Smartmatic is going to come in and finish the job. So little bro gets into a fight, does okay. You could say maybe got his butt kicked a little bit, or came out perhaps a little ahead of the fight that he was getting into. And here comes Big Bro to mop up and take care of the rest of the job. So that's going to be really interesting when it happens. And again, that's another case I can't wait to see the discovery on. But perhaps in a little bit of legal maneuvering to offload some people. We don't have Bongino. We don't have Tucker. Supposedly, Box and Wine, Judge Jeannie Pirro is going to be staying. The Bartanamo is going to be staying. Hannity seems like he's staying. So it's very interesting to see what Fox News is doing. However, let's not forget that Tucker is on the record through his text messages and everything, basically saying he hates Trump, doesn't believe in the election being stolen, can't wait to be done with Trump's narrative. And I would say he probably guessed wrong that when Trump lost, that would be the end of it. And after January 6th, it would be the end of it. Well, he wound up being wrong, and he still had to deal with it, and wound up, of course, interviewing Trump recently. And that was crazy. The other big thing in the news this week, and it has come back around again thanks to 60 Minutes, is Ray Epps was on a 60 Minutes episode, which is kind of funny because you have people saying 60 Minutes is no longer credible because Ray Epps was on there, and he's like, I'm not part of the FBI. And right-wingers are like, oh, yeah, sure, you weren't part of the FBI, all right. Yeah, I believe that. And they're like, oh, well, 60 Minutes lost their credibility. Well, it wasn't but a couple weeks earlier when 60 Minutes had Marjorie Taylor Greene on there, and in a lot of ways allowed her to espouse her lies unchecked, including the big one of what she accused the Democratic Party of being. And Leslie Stahl was kind of like, do you have any proof of that? And she just said, wow. So the left took it as, it is such a ridiculous statement. Leslie Stahl couldn't even really wrap her head around it. The right believed it as Marjorie Taylor Greene owned Leslie Stahl, and she was speechless and she can't defend it. To be honest, she didn't deem it necessary of any more response because it was that crazy. It is literally like I took a plane and discovered that the earth is flat and Santa Claus lives on the other side of the planet. I mean, that's how nuts what Marjorie Taylor Greene was saying in that episode. And Leslie was just flabbergasted at that point. I do not believe she was owned. I believe she was like, I can't say anything more to this crazy lady. So 60 Minutes having Ray Epps on there has been controversial, to say the least. It is very big water cooler talk. Here on Twitter, Denver Riggleman had said it is not probable that Ray Epps was an FBI plant. Our team did a telephony analysis and call chaining on phone records along with identity resolution for every single number. We conducted deep dives using advanced tools on the dark, deep, and open web and every communication video we could access. We cross-checked every FBI, local law enforcement, state law enforcement, local federal offices, etc. phone numbers and communications. There's a considerable delta between possible and probable. So that's the data swing when he talks about delta. Data and expert analysis help pros know the difference. It is his belief that Ray Epps was not a FBI plant. Now, some of the right who are a little bit better about this are going, okay, he's not FBI. Well, then he's CIA. And that is, of course, crazy too. And Denver brings up the fact that with total certainty, it is a rare thing. However, people like Tucky Wuckums, Darren Beatty, Thomas Massey, Laura Ingraham, and Donald Trump, and so many of the others who were culpable in spreading this conspiracy theory about Ray Epps, they were the ones who perpetuated the radicalization of their supporters and put Epps' life in danger. People down in the comments immediately want to know who was the bomber with the pipe bombs and everything on the night of J 5th. A lot of people believe that is Marjorie Taylor Greene, thanks to the pants and the gait and the shoes. But he's saying this is going to take a lot of work to get there. This person asked, I wonder how Ray Epps feels about his Trump and MAGA now. And Denver says, I know it, and it's not good. So Ray Epps was on video the night before saying, we need to go to the Capitol. We need to go into it, but we need to do it peacefully. And then on J6, he was outside and never entered and tried to stop a lot of the violence based on the videos that were taking place at the time. People believed, of course, he was a FBI plant to provoke the crowd into doing things. As we all know, we've covered on this channel, there have been several different J6 narratives that have spun up ever since J6. And that included saying that QAnon shaman was not a Trumper because what Trumper dresses like that. Also, one of the guys pictured with QAnon shaman, the yellow hoodie guy, had a hammer and sickle tattoo on his hand, which meant he was Antifa, he was BLM, he was a communist and everything. That was not, in fact, true. It was the symbol from the game Dishonored by Arcane Studios. People who game very much know Dishonored 1 and 2. And the symbol was very clearly not the hammer and sickle Russian communist symbol whatsoever. One of the other people they were photographed with, people tried to say, oh, look, he's wearing a shirt that says Antifa, but it was a cropped picture, and the picture actually said Antifa sucks. And this guy has a well-known case file with the Southern Poverty and Law Center as being a absolute racist. So everything they tried to spin, everything the right tried to spin on J6 and J7 wound up being fake. This whole thing of it's Antifa and BLM was not true. All the narratives that kept trying to twist J6 into not being Trump fanatics, all of them have fallen apart. Tucker, if you think about it, he's now gone from Fox. He was the one who got the 4,000 hours from Kevin McCarthy. Now what? Do you honestly think somebody's going to pick up the torch at Fox and continue to release more of that footage, especially when the Jacob Chansley footage was such a colossal failure that it was shredded within a day of it broadcasting on Fox? And in a legal setting, when people tried to use the Jacob Chansley in courts with Yvonne St. Cyr and Dominic Pizzola, it failed. It did nothing. It changed nothing for them, and it was laughed out of the courts. And QAnon Shaman is going to fulfill his sentence as he originally pled guilty to, even though he's going to a halfway house. So this Ray Epps narrative that he is an FBI informant, a plant, he works for the government, CIA, you may sit here and wonder, well, why isn't this guy arrested? Why isn't he rotting in jail like everybody else and everything? It is because he never committed any part of the breach. And in terms of riling people up, if he was a FBI plant, if he was CIA, if he was like the undercover Boogaloo boys that we saw during Antifa and BLM riots and demonstrations during 2020, when we saw the people with the umbrellas and dropping off the bricks and everything, anybody who allowed themselves to be pushed into violence that day, pushed into breaking the law, pushed into committing misdemeanors and felonies because somebody like Ray Epps sat there and shouted in their ear, go in there and do this. If they fell for that, then it just makes them brainless sheep. If they woke up that day and were not intending to choose violence and were not intending to go to the Capitol and do the felonious things that they had done, if that's how they were waking up that day and Ray Epps pushed them into it, then they can't think for themselves, and they allowed themselves to become a victim of groupthink and group mentality. So that's not an excuse either. It is another sad attempt at spinning J6 into being quote-unquote not my fault if you are a pro-Trump person. You want to blame Antifa, you want to blame BLM, you want to blame the leftist journalist who was there recording everything, you want to blame Ray Epps. There's nobody to blame but yourself. And you could see that in the case of Ashley Babbitt, who seemed highly radicalized before she got there with the "Where's Kamala" screaming. And unfortunately, with Roseanne Boylan losing her life that day, it is well documented from her family that the Pizzagate, Wayfair, child trafficking type conspiracies is why she was there that day. That's why she died. And now finally, and this came out, and this has been spinning out since the end of last week, text messages revealed Trump operatives considering using breached voting data to decertify Georgia's Senate. So if you are not familiar with this case, this is a pro-Trump Georgia elections official allowed in Coffee County, allowed members of Trump's legal team, including Rudy and Sidney the Kraken Powell, to gain access to machine data. And you see here, Fanni Willis' name is mentioned. It's because Fanni had subpoenaed Giuliani and Powell as part of her probe. Giuliani has been told he is a target in the Fulton County probe, and a special grand jury convened for the case recommended issuing multiple indictments in its final report completed in February. They say that Willis and her team have in their possession evidence that Trump's allies plan to use the breach voting data not only in Georgia to decertify the state Senate runoff, but in other locations, including Antrim County up in Michigan, which was another hotbed of conspiracy laden stuff. Here, they have surveillance footage that shows that the slate of fake Trump electors were escorted by operatives into the Georgia County's election office right before the voting machine breach had occurred. So, this is another one of the reasons why Fanni Willis is taking her time. A few weeks before the Coffee County breach in late December 2020, Trump allies were granted access to voting machines in Antrim County. It had roughly 24,000 people, but he won that with 60%. This ASOG group and Trump's conspiracy team took the data and were going to produce a report alleging that Dominion voting systems had vulnerabilities. That report had been widely debunked and formed the basis of the lawsuit filed by Powell in December of 2020 to change the election results in Michigan. It was one of the 60-plus failures that was roundly rejected. This also involves Doug Logan, whose name you might know from Cyber Ninjas. So everything about Trump's narrative that he spun out about the election is falling apart. Antrim County was a big thing that the conspiracy theorists believe in. Of course, Fulton County, Georgia's been a big thing. Arizona, the work that Cyber Ninjas did, all of this stuff is now falling by the wayside. And some of the wheels of justice are happening. The lady who brought in that witness to Arizona who said everybody was part of a Sinaloa cartel, she got the boot for what she did. And it looks like she's not going to get let back in. And that is good for that, because if you bring into somebody to a hearing that you know was going to already spew lies, and you know that, and make wild accusations, and make no mistake, that lady was an insurance agent. It is no better than when Rudy's team got Melissa Carroll, a.k.a. the After David's lady, and got her off of exploretalent.com. And she was like, I witnessed all this crazy stuff, and the truck pulled up, and you, sir, did bad things. And they're like, the truck was for the cafeteria. And she's like, well, I have After David's. I mean, she was made fun of on Saturday Night Live. That's how bad it was. So anyway, this is going to be an interesting week. It's going to be an interesting next couple of weeks as we deal with the fallout from Republicans breaching voting data, which is what they kept saying that the left was doing. Trump has the E. Jean Carroll case going on. We have, of course, Ray Epps being hot in the media right now because of 60 Minutes and everything. So it's a sad, but in a certain way, it's an exciting time to be aware of politics going on right now here in the States. So this is the Political Napalm signing off, and hopefully we'll be back in touch again soon.